The New York Rangers continue to tear through the competition, closing the weekend with a 5-2 win over the Islanders. Will Matt Rempe be back on the lineup on Tuesday after serving his suspension? And what is the latest on Ryan Lindgren?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blueshirts fans, to episode number 1028 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So a pretty solid weekend for the Rangers, wouldn't you say? They go into Pittsburgh, take care of business there. They come back home to play the Islanders, take care of business once again. And I do want to actually start off today's episode by acknowledging a mistake that I made in our most recent episode. I sort of had the right theme as far as what was going on for the Rangers this weekend. I knew they were playing two Metro Division opponents. I knew they were playing two teams that desperately needed wins, but for one reason or another, somehow I thought the Rangers were playing the Devils on Sunday. They, of course, did not play the Devils. It was the Islanders, and they're actually going to be playing the Devils twice more. They play them on Tuesday, April 9th, and Saturday, April 13th. They'll be playing the Islanders twice more. Those are the fourth and second to last games of the regular season for the Rangers, and Islanders might be a desperate team, even more so than they already are, depending on where they are in the standings when those games roll around. So we'll see what happens then. But the Rangers, they've been rolling, and they're playing a lot of games recently. The schedule in March is very dense. Feels like they're playing basically every day. They just got done playing 5 games in 7 days, and they just keep winning and winning and winning. They won 4 out of those 5 games. They are 16-3-1 in their last 20. So obviously a really good time of the year right now as we get toward the home stretch to be playing your best brand of hockey. You get as good of a seed as you can possibly get in the playoffs, and you take it from there, and obviously you hope to go on a long run. But it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine for the Rangers in this game, because Ryan Lindgren got injured, the heart and soul of the team, the winner of the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award last year, and somebody that you got to figure would be in the running again this year. He was injured during this game. I didn't see it happen, during the live play, or I didn't really notice that, he had gotten hurt. But basically, him and Pajot, they're both battling for position. They're moving toward the boards, and they both hit the boards, really hard. Two big guys, and Lindgren, his leg kind of got caught behind him, and he immediately kind of reached for his left knee, and he's down on the ice, and play is halted, and the Garden gets very quiet. He was helped off the ice by Gustafson and Lafreniere. But it goes without saying, this is not the kind of player that you want to lose. Obviously, you don't want to lose anybody, and the Rangers are already down a couple of forwards. Philip Hedl out for the year. Blake Wheeler, very, very likely out for the year unless there's a deep playoff run, and maybe he works his way back. You never know. But bottom line, and we don't know that about Lindgren yet. I'm not going to speculate as far as what the injury timetable could be. Obviously, there's a lot of people that saw what happened, and they're worried, and rightfully so. But there's some people that are declaring, a minute or two after it happened, that his season is over. Again, I'm not going to go that far. If there's any player on the Rangers or maybe in the NHL where an injury can look bad, but he's right back out there a game or two later, I think Ryan Lindgren is that guy. We don't know for sure. It is Monday morning as I'm recording this, and after scouring Twitter, I haven't seen anything definitive on Ryan Lindgren. Laviolette mentioned after the game yesterday that they still have to do some testing and whatnot, so we'll see how it goes there. But yeah, Ryan Lindgren, I mean, I've talked about this in the past. He's my favorite player on the Rangers, and even I am always left surprised when I see what a difference he really makes. And when you look at the splits over the last handful of seasons, as far as how many goals the Rangers tend to give up when he plays versus how many they give up when he does not play, it's staggering, the difference. And you look at the Ranger defensemen, and I guess the silver lining here, if Lindgren does have to miss time, is that they do seem to have more depth on their blue line than they've had in a long time. But still, I mean, you're going to be down Ryan Lindgren. you're going to be down Jacob Trouba. Now, Trouba we know is eventually going to get back in there, but you're missing two of your top guys and guys that you count on to play top 4 minutes, and that's obviously an unfortunate situation. Right now, we'll just keep our fingers crossed that Ryan Lindgren can make it back. The good thing is that they don't have to rush him back. And again, I don't know what the diagnosis is, what the actual injury is, or what the timetable of him coming back is going to be. But they can always err on the side of caution when it comes to Ryan Lindgren. If he is able to return, give him an extra game, give him an extra 2 games. We know the Rangers are going to the playoffs. And of course, you want to win as many games as possible and play as well as you can going into the postseason and get that high seed if you can, home ice advantage through however many rounds. But the most important thing, I think, is getting your team to the playoffs, to the dance, as healthy as you possibly can. And, we'll see. The Rangers are back in action Tuesday against the Jets. So no idea if Lindgren's going to be out there or not. I mean, again, it didn't look good. He couldn't put any weight on his left leg. So my guess would be that he probably wouldn't play against the Jets. But again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know for sure what's going on there. And if there's one player I know not to bet against when it comes to the NHL, I think Ryan Lindgren is definitely that guy. But man, he just takes a beating out there. And one of those guys, not even just from, what he does on the ice, but just he's just a great teammate. He's one of those guys I think you just like to go to battle with him. I've said it before. I said it earlier in this episode, the heart and soul of the New York Rangers. So obviously, fingers crossed it's not anything too serious and he can eventually get back in there. We will wait and see what happens there. And once we get some news, we'll certainly talk about that in a future episode. But the Rangers being proactive, it would seem they've called up Brandon Scanlon from the Hartford Wolfpack. So you look at that, I mean, right there, that's probably a clue that Lindgren probably will not be available for the game against the Jets on Tuesday. But Brandon Scanlon, for anybody that needs a refresher who this guy is and what his track record is, 24 years old, big defenseman, 6'4", 214 pounds, a lefty shot. He has never appeared in an NHL game, but he has played the last 3 seasons with the Hartford Wolfpack. And this year with the Pack, 57 games, 8 goals, 8 assists. He's also a +3. But I would imagine that even if Lindgren does not play, we're not going to see Scanlon either. I would think that probably Chad Ruhwedel will probably make his New York Ranger debut. Obviously, the Rangers acquired him right before the deadline from the Penguins in exchange for a 4th-round draft pick. I mean, honestly, if they go with Scanlon over Ruhwedel, then I'm not even sure why they traded for Ruhwedel because you gave up a 4th-rounder for him. It's not an enormous, asking price. It's not an enormous asset to give away, but it's something. And, if you're going to have him not even be the 8th defenseman, like if they go with Scanlon, then Ruhwedel is no higher than 9th on the depth chart. And if that's the case, then I don't even know why you make that kind of a trade. But I would imagine, like I said, if Lindgren cannot go, that we will see Chad Ruhwedel make his Ranger debut. And in one hand, that's kind of a nice thing because we can finally see what he's all about, see what he brings to the table, see how he fits in with the Rangers. Is this somebody that in a playoff series could eventually become an option for the Rangers? We could kind of get some answers to those questions or start to get some of those answers. It's just an unfortunate situation that, this is how it happened with Ryan Lindgren going down with a tough injury. And again, we hope that he gets back out there. He just embodies old school blue collar hockey. Just seems like an ultimate team first guy, takes a beating out there. He got hurt in the last game that the Rangers played against the Islanders. Remember, he crashed into the boards really hard and took a stick to the face, to the eye area. Glad he came out of that as well as you can. I mean, obviously, I'm sure that didn't feel very good, but yeah, I mean, he's just that dude, man. He's somebody that you want to go to battle with. He's somebody that you want as a teammate. And like I said, fingers crossed, not even just for the Rangers, but for Ryan Lindgren himself. I mean, the playoffs are coming up. He's been a big part of this team the last handful of seasons, and I'm sure he wants to go out there and compete his tail off when the postseason begins. So hopefully he's in a situation where he can still do that, but obviously we'll keep our eye on that going forward. Gonna keep everything rolling just a second. I want to go ahead and turn our attention to Kaapo Kakko. He scores a goal for the 2nd straight day and continues to look good playing on the Ranger 3rd line. So we'll talk about Kakko. We're going to also talk about Cuylle a little bit later and also Matt Rempe potentially making his return to the lineup as his suspension has now concluded. And we're going to do all that fun stuff in just a second. First, though, we definitely would like to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Sleeper. We are getting toward the postseason, Ranger fans, and they have basically been on top of the Metro Division the entire season, looking like one of the better teams in hockey. But regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Panarin or Lafreniere or Trocheck or Igor will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8-player stats. You heard me, Reindeer fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you will get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. And of course, we also would like to remind everybody that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, so we'll go ahead and keep everything rolling here. I do want to shift our attention to Kaapo Kakko. He's starting to look good again, starting to pick it back up, starting to be very noticeable out there. His line has played very well ever since they've kind of reconfigured it. And, that third line is kind of a work in progress, I would say, because we saw Cuylle there with Wenberg and Kakko, and in this game, Brodzinski starts the game there. But Kakko scores a goal for the second straight day. And first we should actually probably talk about that in a little bit more detail. The lineup change, or not so much the lineup change, but the line combination change. The third line now, left to right, Brodzinski, Wenberg, and Kakko. And then the fourth line, Cuylle, Goodrow, and Vesey. And what I love about this is the two players that, switch lines, Brodzinski and Cuylle, they both end up scoring a goal in this game. So too does Kaapo Kakko. So that's right there. 3 of your 5 goals being scored from guys on your bottom 6. So that in general just bodes very well for the Rangers going forward. Seems like, they're getting a little bit of, depth scoring, recently, and hopefully going forward as well. Something that, maybe they lacked at times this season. But, Kakko, this is going to need to be studied in a lab somewhere, because I'm not the only person to suggest this, and certainly a lot of you guys have thrown this out as well. But Kaapo Kakko plays so much better as a third liner when he's playing with, non-superstar players than he does when he's playing with, Mika and Kreider for sure. We saw him get a couple of different chances with them this season, and it's not all on him. I know Mika and Kreider at times have struggled 5v5. I will acknowledge that. But again, he seems to just do a lot better when he's in the third line role, almost no matter who he's playing with. And of course, the working theory here from both myself and I'm sure a lot of you as well is that Kakko, when he's with guys that are sort of role players, and you've got Alex Wenberg, who's a defensive specialist, you've got Will Cuylle, who's a rookie, or you've got Brodzinski, the career NHL, AHL swingman basically, and he's finally stuck with the Rangers this season. But he does better with those players than he does with the superstar players. And the reason for that seems to be that Kakko just becomes a little bit more assertive when he's out there with the non-superstar players. When he's out there with, Mika and Kreider, we've seen him with Panarin every once in a while in the past too. It feels like he kind of fades to the background, feels the need to defer. When he's out there with, the guys that I just mentioned, it feels like he's just more assertive. He drives the play. He'll hang on to the puck for a little bit longer. Just looks like a totally different player. He becomes that guy on the line. The top player on the line when he's with the superstars, again, becomes a background player. He was doing very well, and I love this line that they had together for a little while. It was Cuylle, Brodzinski, and Kakko. That was before the trade deadline. So, obviously the team has changed a little bit since then, but that line looked really good together. And then they move Kakko from that line up to Mika and Kreider. He completely disappears. Now he's back down on the third line with Wenberg and either Brodzinski or Cuylle, depending on who they go with on that line on any given day. And again, he's starting to show up. And it's not just the goals that he's scoring, just a very noticeable player. I thought that this line had an excellent shift early in the game. So they're out there, first period, I believe it was their first shift of the game. And you actually had Ryan Lindgren stealing the puck in the neutral zone. He dumped it deep. But then this Ranger third line really went to work. You had Brodzinski, pressuring the puck, and the Islanders give it away to Wenberg. Wenberg passes to Kakko. Kakko gets a shot, was not able to convert. But this line just continues to dominate possession, for this entire shift here and just in general as well. Wenberg had a chance to take a shot a little bit later. Instead, he passed it to Brodzinski for a shot that would not go. But This line was just getting warmed up. It really feels like this line together, they spend the entirety of their shift in the offensive zone. Very rarely do you see these guys getting caught in their own zone and back on their heels and under any kind of pressure. So even if they're not creating, great scoring opportunities, they're at least dominating possession and forcing their opponent to obviously expand some energy. And if it's one of the other team's top lines, then obviously they can't get anything going offensively if they're hemmed in their own zone, as we've seen opposing lines often be the case, when they're up against this third line for the Rangers. But then you get the goal that Kakko scored. You've got Wennberg and Kakko, really working hard along the boards, maintaining possession. Kakko is kind of holding it behind the net. He's stick handling, looking to pass in front. He eventually comes out the right side, makes a pass, was not able to connect. But Zach Jones pinched. He picked it up. Jones continues to play well. Jones circled the entire offensive zone, gets it over to Gustafsson. Gustafsson moves to the net and shoots wide. Jones sends it behind the boards, back around the other way. Gustafsson has it again. He's pinned against the boards. So Kakko comes over, helps him out, picks up the puck, moves toward the net, and just shoots and scores. Kakko basically took on the entire Islander team here and came out on top. And that boosted the Ranger lead at the time to 4-2. So again, try to figure this out. Kakko will excel with career minor leaguers and rookies and defensive specialists. Can't really seem to get anything going, or just doesn't play his best when he's out there with the established star players on the New York Rangers. And, one other thing that I'll throw out there is this is something that I saw on Twitter a while back, and I think there's so much truth to it when it comes to Kaapo Kakko. I've been meaning to get to this, and, we'll cover it now. Don't remember who sent out this tweet, so I apologize. But, going into the trade deadline, there was all this speculation that, Kakko could be traded. And, I said on here that I don't think he should be completely untouchable. I don't think you give him away just to give him away. But if you're looking to bring in a big-time difference maker and a star player, and, that team is hung up on, they really want Kaapo Kakko, to me, it's something that at least should be discussed. I don't think he's at the point that he's completely untouchable anymore. But the point that this person made on Twitter going into the trade deadline, this person was very anti-Kakko trade. And I thought an excellent point was made here that this is the kind of player, Kaapo Kakko, that Chris Drury would trade for at the trade deadline. Not the guy that he'd be looking to unload. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. We've seen, first of all, Kaapo Kakko, very good defensive forward. We know that. He grades out very favorably there, and he does make plays defensively. And that's kind of the type of player that Drury looks to bring in at the deadline. We saw that a couple of years ago with Andrew Kopp. Kopp played very, very well during his time with the Rangers. He became like a point-per-game player on top of being a very good defensive forward. And obviously playing with Panarin helps there, but nevertheless, Kopp really stepped up. We saw that 2 deadlines in a row. Drury goes out and acquires Tyler Mott, again, a defensive forward specialist. And then at this deadline, same thing with Alex Wennberg. I mean, he's known, he can score a little bit every now and then, but known mostly as a strong defensive forward. And obviously, he's playing on the penalty kill for the Rangers as well. And when he goes out and gets these players, they're all guys that, in addition to being strong defensive forwards, you kind of feel like, at least with like Kopp and maybe with Wennberg too, that there's a little bit more offense that they can kind of unlock. And you say all these things and you're basically describing Kaapo Kakko. Again, this is the kind of player, like if Kakko was out there and kind of struggling on whatever team, and this is a dude that, was the number 2 overall pick years ago, and maybe hasn't quite hit his stride yet, but is a very good defensive forward and does seem to have a little bit more to offer offensively than he's shown so far. Yeah, that's Drury's kind of player, like almost to a T. So maybe it is a good thing that they held on to Kakko. And, I say this to myself as much as anybody else out there, because there's times where I have certainly critiqued Kakko. And I think the one thing that's always kind of given me a little bit of concern with Kakko over the years is that you just don't see enough of that wow factor. You don't see enough wow plays from Kaapo Kakko for somebody that was so highly thought of and obviously such a high draft pick. But let's just take away the whole draft pick status thing, and let's just look at Kaapo Kakko for the player that he is. I just basically described him, a couple of minutes ago. They're very strong defensive forward, somebody that can chip in offensively from time to time. And he's on a line right now that, basically seems to dominate possession and has the rink tilted in their favor every time he's out there. So instead of worrying so much, and again, I say this to myself as much as anybody else, instead of worrying so much about the things that Kaapo Kakko isn't and the things that he doesn't do exceptionally well, let's look at the things he does do well. He tends to scuffle a little bit and fade to the background whenever he's on that top line. But as a third-line NHL player, I mean, Kaapo Kakko is a very good player. If you just look at him through that lens and stop worrying about when he was drafted, you've got a guy that goes out there and plays some really solid hockey far more often than not. I still think it's fair to say that there's not as many wow plays as you would like to see from Kaapo Kakko, but be that as it may, this guy goes out there and gives you very steady, strong, consistent hockey, and that's been on display the last handful of games, and hopefully it's just the start of what this line can do together, because this has a chance. I mean, this could be a big-time difference-making line come Stanley Cup playoff time, so we'll keep our eye on them, and hopefully Kaapo Kakko keeps going. If he can pick up the scoring, that's awesome. Even if he doesn't, he still does have some value to this Ranger team. So, like I said, intriguing line for sure, and we'll keep our eye on them going forward for sure. Going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I'm going to talk about Will Cuylle. He's a guy that's continuing to step up for the Rangers and just play very steady hockey. Also, we've got our unsung hero, and going to talk about Matt Rempe possibly getting back into the lineup now that his suspension has ended. We're going to get to all that fun stuff in just a second. But first, we definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about Will Cuylle, shall we? He continues what's been an exceptional rookie season. Just one of those guys that's extraordinarily steady and consistent. And, you say those things about a 21-year-old rookie, and I think it makes it even more impressive. And as we talked about, they had him and Brodzinski kind of flip-flopping. Brodzinski goes up to the third line, Cuylle to the fourth line. Although I think I saw Cuylle out there, maybe it was a partial line change, but I think I saw Cuylle out there with his usual running mates on the third line, Wenberg and Kakko at one time or another. But bottom line, Cuylle ends up scoring a goal in this game, and an important goal, gave the Rangers a 2-1 lead. And it's just nice to see the secondary scoring in general. I mentioned that not too long ago, but you get one from Brodzinski, you get one from Kakko, you get from Cuylle. All three of those guys are playing in the bottom six, and that's really nice to see. And, consider this. The Rangers put up 5 goals in this game with none of Panarin, Trocheck, or Kreider lighting the lamp, so that's very encouraging as well. But as for Cuylle, there's part of me that wants to see him be given a bigger role, because I think he's ready for it. I know a lot of people have been kind of clamoring for Cuylle to get more of an opportunity when it comes to the power play, obviously the second power play unit. And, I'd be open to that. I think, at this point, he probably does deserve that chance. It might be a little bit of a moot point, though, just because the second unit is out there so infrequently anyway. The top unit tends to kind of dominate power play time. But to give Cuylle a chance there, I'd certainly be open to that. I think there's some upside when it comes to Cuylle in that kind of a role. But, you look at the end of this game, and this is not uncommon. You look at the box score, and Will Cuylle has the least amount of ice time for any player on the Rangers at 10:09. And at first glance, it's like, oh, come on. Cuylle deserves better than that. He doesn't deserve to be dead last on the team in time on the ice. But then you look at the rest of this Ranger roster, and it's like, well, they got a lot of really good players on this team. And it just goes to show how far this team has come in a short amount of time. If we go back like 3 years, Will Cuylle might be out there for 15, 16, 17 minutes a night, and he might be in a top 6 role. And he might be one of those guys that are helping you figure out like how you even fill out the lineup on any given night, because the Rangers just didn't have the depth back then that they do now. There's part of me, I really would like to see Will Cuylle in a bigger role for this team. But by that same token, the Rangers don't really need it. They don't really have to rush him along. They don't need to put too much on his plate. And again, it's not because he can't handle it, but it's because the Rangers have that much more depth than they did a few years ago. And that's not really a problem, but I guess it falls under a good problem to have. There's guys that it feels like they deserve more ice time. There's other guys that are healthy scratches on certain nights when everybody's healthy, and it feels like they don't really deserve to be healthy scratches. But as I just said, good problem to have. This team is deeper than it's been in a really long time. Even the last 2 years, where they made the playoffs both years, 100+ points both years, Eastern Conference Final 2 years ago. You could very easily make the argument that this is the deepest team that the Rangers have had since like 2014, 2015, one of those teams that was going to the finals or going to the Eastern Conference Final, whatever the case was. But yeah, a very deep team. And again, Will Cuylle, could he take on a bigger role? Yeah, I think he's capable of doing that. Do the Rangers need him to take on a bigger role? Not really. Not really. There's good players in front of him that have earned their spot as well. So yeah, again, just nice to see Cuylle playing the brand of hockey that he has been playing, very physical, and adding a little bit of offense as well. Again, I mentioned that he had the goal in this game, gave the Rangers a 2-1 lead. This goal really happened out of nowhere. Brilliant play by Lindgren here. I wanted to talk about this earlier, but I figured I'd save it for now. You've got Adam Fox. He's got the puck along the boards in the Ranger zone. He kind of makes a spinning pass to Ryan Lindgren. Lindgren is in like kind of the middle of the ice, and he skates to his left, basically trying to open up passing lane to get the puck to Cuylle. And that's exactly what he did. Ryan Lindgren passing from his own zone all the way up to the opposing blue line to Will Cuylle. And that's another thing about Lindgren. We think of, toughness and old school hockey and, taking a beating out there and all these, nasty scars he's got all over his face that just made him look like the coolest player in the NHL. But he's a better puck handler than I think he'll ever get credit for. And that was on display here. Brilliant pass up the ice to Will Cuylle. Cuylle takes it over the blue line, just rips a shot between the pad and the glove of Sorokin. It goes in 2-1. And there's Will Cuylle contributing offensively. And again, just a very, very strong rookie season for Will Cuylle. I think his floor is very high. Like at the absolute worst, I think Will Cuylle is going to be a really strong third line type of player for his career. And I think there's more there. He's obviously somebody that the Rangers think highly of, former second round draft pick. It's nice to see them, get draft picks right every once in a while. So, yeah, I mean, Cuylle, he's got a very high floor. I think he's also got a higher ceiling than maybe a lot of us may have anticipated, because he does a lot of things to help this team win. And again, just very even-keeled, very consistent, especially for a 21-year-old rookie. Unsung hero for this game, we're going to go with Peter Laviolette. I never said it had to be a player. We're going to go with Laviolette as the unsung hero. I just think the focus of this Ranger team has been very impressive over the last week or so here. Obviously, they didn't defend very well against the Penguins. They could have done a little bit better there, but they still found a way to get the job done. They still competed hard. They were skating very well in that game. Same for this game against the Islanders here. The Rangers played two desperate teams over this weekend, and they beat both of them by 3 goals each. So obviously knocking back teams that really need wins and doing so in fairly dominant fashion. And when you look at what they've done over the past week, the Rangers played 5 games in 7 days, which, by the way, that's the most games that you can play in that amount of time. The NHL won't schedule anybody for 6 games in 7 days. So they run the gauntlet. They play some really good teams, and the Rangers come out of it 4-1. They get 8 points out of a possible 10. And I think that, for a team to have that kind of focus and, again, knock down these teams that really need wins and come out with urgency and, I guess matching the desperation of the desperate teams and just executing and playing strong hockey wasn't perfect. There's things you can nitpick here and there, but the compete level was always there for the Rangers. And this is a team that, again, we know they're going to the playoffs. At this point, they have to know they're going to the playoffs, but you wouldn't know it. You would think that they were out there fighting for their playoff lives this entire weekend. And I think that's a credit to the coaching staff, keeping these guys hungry and focused and locked in. And that's what we saw from the Rangers. And again, 4-1, playing 5 games in 7 days. But there'll still be somebody out there, a Ranger fan that says something about this team having no heart because they have the audacity to not go 82-0. But, all evidence points to the contrary. The Rangers really showed a lot of heart going through this gauntlet here against some tough teams, some desperate teams, winning in dominant fashion in several instances. And, heading toward the end of March here. Now, it doesn't get any easier. That's something else we got to throw out there. Next 3 games are home Jets, at Bruins, home Panthers. Those games will be played on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, respectively. And then the schedule does ease up a little bit for the end of March, and then certainly in April, several non-playoff teams that the Rangers will be playing in April. Be that as it may, obviously, you still got to keep bringing it, and hopefully the Rangers can finish the season strong and go into the playoffs on a high note. Also want to point out before we call it a day here, the Rangers are now 11-1, and that will be their final record. 11-1 in the final game of a back-to-back. And again, somebody will say something about how this team has no heart, but they won 11 out of 12 games when playing on the second game of a back-to-back. That's very, very impressive to me. I think it's probably impressive to a lot of you as well. 145 days in a row in first place for the Rangers. Got to love a stat like that. They put that on the broadcast the other day, just yesterday. And also want to talk about Matt Rempe. He is now unsuspended. He will be potentially making his return to the lineup. And Jackie Redmond, obviously this is a national game. She had a report during one of the play stoppages. She said that she had talked to Peter Laviolette, and she came away with the impression that Rempe would be back into the lineup on Tuesday against the Jets. Now, she said that Laviolette did not, officially confirm it with her, but he was talking about the value that Matt Rempe, somebody of that skill set, brings to the lineup. And so, hearing all that, I get the impression it'll probably be Rempe back in the lineup. As far as who comes out, probably Brodzinski, and that's rough because, Brodzinski has played well. He had that really rough game against the Lightning, a couple of turnovers. I think he's looked really good these last two games that the Rangers played over the weekend. So nice to see him get back on track after, one rough game. People were killing him on Twitter for that. He had a bad game. It happens from time to time, and I think overall he's played well this year. And like I said, Brodzinski does have a feel-good story. It's unfortunate that he might have to come out of the lineup. I just don't know who else it would be if they were going to take somebody else out of the lineup in favor of Rempe. Get the feeling it probably will be Johnny Brodzinski if Rempe goes back in. But, we know Brodzinski's a pro, and we know he'll stay ready. And even if he does come out of the lineup, chances are very good that we have not seen the last of Johnny Brodzinski this season. So we'll see how that whole thing shakes out. Curious to see how the Rangers line up on Tuesday against the Jets. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.